It's in the way of a film crew, apparently. I very much doubt it is anybody here, but anyway, I said that I'd check with us. Okay. Okay, we might still be waiting for people, but Rebecca and Mikael are going to chair the next session, which is about the RItrain knowledge exchange, staff exchanges.
Okay, so we will get started with our next session on the RItrain staff exchanges. And so my name is Michael Ress from InfoFrontier, and I'm co-chairing this session together with Rebecca Ludwig from RItrain. We have about 40 to 45 minutes for this. I will just very briefly give you a short introduction what we did with the RItrain staff exchanges, or I guess the full name would be RItrain staff and knowledge exchanges, about the general idea and what we achieved. And then we will do a little bit of a questions and answer session with people, attendees here in the audience that have attended or hosted such staff exchanges. I would like to start with, I think the last session that we just had was a wonderful idea of what could also be achieved within such a staff exchange, because there, I mean, you have all the elements in place. So you have different people with different experiences, maybe not from the same research infrastructure, and then you could use such a framework that we just used on brainstorming on specific problems. So, yeah, as I said, the next session is about RItrain staff exchanges, and so I guess the idea in a nutshell of these efforts was, I mean, to really, as a research infrastructure manager, experience firsthand how other research infrastructures approach specific topics. So this has been done in these staff exchanges, which took different formats. For instance, one-to-one visits would be I guess the minimum solution, but then very often groups, there were specific topics and groups would visit another research infrastructure. And this first-hand experience, exchange of knowledge and first experience goes, of course, both ways. So it's the attendees going to a specific research infrastructure, but of course the hosts, I guess, will learn at least as much from this experience. So in total, we organized 7 staff exchanges within the RItrain project, and 42 participants participated all over in these exchanges. This is not, I think this is not counting one-to-one visits between research infrastructures. And there was a range of topics and also formats, more classroom style, others really like workshop-y. And I just want to give a very brief overview on the topics that were being touched. And what you see here on that slide is different announcements. So the Twitter announcement was very active to get these people, get people interested in this. So it was a learn about governance. For instance, I think the top right one was the first RItrain exchange of experience workshop. There was something from RItrain. There was from the Czech bioimaging node, they were hosting one, and then also research infrastructures like DAISY. The topic of operating and managing large one-site research infrastructures. So the topics covered things like strategic vision, governance, business development, aspects of service provision. As I said, in the case of DAISY, operating and managing large, sustainable one-site research infrastructures. But then there was also the problem of operational planning between hubs and nodes was a topic. Stakeholder management and community building, and this came also up in the networking sessions yesterday, that this is a really important topic where you usually don't spend enough time on. equality, diversity, and inclusion, and project management. So these were topics that were touched. I can personally very briefly report on my experience, because I was I was attending a staff exchange at DESI about operating and managing large, sustainable on-site research infrastructure. And for me, what triggered me to go there was really to look. So I'm working in a biomedical distributed research infrastructure. So we have this hubs and nodes model, and we have specific problems and challenges around that. So I was really interested to experience firsthand whether these issues are the same. So what is the difference with the one side, large scale, as we always call it, super tankers in the physical sciences? And it was really a very interesting experience, because first of all, we saw that problems may be the same, solutions may be similar, but then of course there's very specific things that are specific to different types of research infrastructures, being them distributed or single-sited. Okay, that just as a brief introduction to what we wanted to achieve with the staff exchanges. But now we want to get a little bit deeper, and we will have, as I said, this question and answer session with participants and hosts, and we have prepared a set of questions, and we already have also earmarked some victims to answer these questions. And yeah, Rebecca will kick off with the first question.
Yeah, the first question that we would be interested in hearing about is, what was the training need or challenge that prompted you to participate in a staff exchange? And you called them victims, so I will ask Paco as a first participant, maybe also introduce yourself and which staff exchange you participated in.
Okay. Well, thank you for selecting me as a victim here. So I am Paco Colomera, I'm the director of Jive ERIC. At the time I joined the staff exchange, I was 5 days in office in Jive, and I was not the director. So you can imagine that this was really an opportunity, I mean, to be presented with a broad portfolio of the topics that would become my nightmare later, right? So it was very useful. It was about governance, strategy, business planning, and I had some exposure to education before, but that particular way of presenting it, which was condensed, it was only a couple of days, it was very well organized, so we could look maybe with some depth, not extremely deep, but with enough depth of all of these issues. It made me be more aware of the things that, as we say, I mean, you not only know what you know, but you know more if you are aware of what you don't know, right? So it was a very good way to point me in the direction that later I could do other training exercises, including the master program. So I think in that sense, it was like opening my eyes to the portfolio. And I must confess, this was very specific because I had just started in the job. I mean, maybe in a different moment in my career would be different. But at that very moment, it was really a very good way, a very good door to get in. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Paco. So it was a lot about removing the unknown unknowns and raising awareness. Marlene, you also participated in a staff exchange, so can you explain what your training need was at that time?
Okay, yes, so my name is Marlene Bosgaerts and I'm involved in the MIRI research infrastructure. It's on microbial resources. I've been working for and coordinating microbial culture collections in Belgium for many years. It's a team of 5 people that are doing this job. This cell of 5 people will become the Belgium node of the MIRI ERIC research infrastructure. So my purpose of participating in the staff exchange was to know what do we need to change in our daily practice, because there will be this additional layer of European research infrastructure. there will be other expectations, maybe other obligations. So I wanted to know, to learn more about how to organize ourselves. Maybe governance had to be adapted. What I really appreciated was the different formats that were combined in a few days. So there was some theory about how to build a business model, but also some cases of other national nodes who presented what they are doing. And then, well, you had plenty of opportunity discussing with your colleagues in the staff exchange. And then finally, a bilateral discussion with really an expert in the field on a specific topic that you had to define beforehand, which was really useful for me. So, positive experience.
Thanks, Marlene. The next question, Michael.
So we wanted to ask, as the next point, which is kind of the core question, what did you learn and experience that you wouldn't have done in a more traditional training format? And I would like to ask Ilaria first, because I know she's on a rush and she needs to go to the airport or so. So Ilaria, in this specific format, what did you learn that you wouldn't have learned in another format?
Thank you, Michael, and thank for having me trying to portray a bit what the experience was. As Paco said, certainly a very good experience. At the time, I was in my role as executive director of EMBRC since not too long. We were writing our business plan, and we were at the end of that effort. But there were things about our business model that needed some confirmation, because we had some ideas, but as we said yesterday, there isn't a chart. It's not like you can take a template and you just put your name in there and the rest is given. So we had to imagine it. And when we went there, we found that the experience of the Ashes was particularly fitting to our own vision of how we would organize our business. And so that was a very relaxing experience in a way, because it told us you're on the right path. And what you are imagining actually has already found some application. Somebody who's got more experience than you in this same exercise has already proven it. And so it was a confirmation that wouldn't have come from a classroom, because we would have had just a theoretical idea what a business model is. That was, in practice, what a business model for a research infrastructure that had apparently a similar understanding of where we would take and how we would organize our business had. So that was our lesson learned, and it was really a great confirmation, and we felt so much more part of this whole experience as with the others, and it was really to say you're on the right track.
Thanks, Ilaria. So we heard a lot about the life cycles of research infrastructures. So I would like to go now and I actually asked one of the research infrastructure participants in the field that were there longer. I'm just looking if I see Claudia here. Yeah, yes. Because Instruct, I mean, is an implemented research infrastructure. So could you also, so what in your stage of running a research infrastructure, what did you learn that you wouldn't have learned otherwise?
My name is Claudia Linamaro. I am the project manager for Instruct, that is the structural biology research infrastructure. We have both been in Staff Exchange as a host and as a participant. And I think it has been very valuable to us. And the difference to a traditional training is that is a lot more sharing of experiences with people that have gone through processes a little earlier than you, or that they are going to go and can learn from you. And also you get feedback both ways, because if you are, for example, in the one we visited ECRAN, they did a great quality management exercise that we are going through now, and I learned from them, and I'm applying that. And on the other way, when we have a staff exchange that we hosted, we have developed our proposal system, our way of reviewing and managing visits, and we were able to share that experience with research infrastructure that we're going to do it, to implement it, and also share our software when appropriate. Then I think this is this training format of a staff exchange is invaluable for that sort of sharing experience. And it has been useful both to be a participant and to host, because you also learn as a host from your participants.
So, Frauke, would you share the same views?
Thank you. Frauke Leitner, Hero Bioimaging. I participated in the staff exchange that was organized by EBI, EMBL EBI, and the topic was on service provision. I joined the staff exchange after I think I had started working for Hero Bioimaging as a research infrastructure about a year ago, so everything was still quite new to me, and I'm responsible, or one of my responsibilities is managing the access to the biological oriented microscopy technologies in Hero Bioimaging. So the topic of service provision was really relevant and close to my heart to me. It was fantastically organized, and what I really appreciated is that we got in contact with many different people across this partner research infrastructure. So we really met lots of people working at EMBL EBI, which is, for me, as I'm an EMBL colleague, also fantastic. And I got in touch with many different aspects of service provision. User experience design, for example, that really stuck with me. It was something completely new to me, but I realized how important it is. And yeah, that's something that I definitely really appreciated. And another thing that was also quite important for me is I'm in Hero Bioimaging somehow the person for the cluster projects in the life sciences, so Corbel and EOS Glyph. And then establishing these connections, getting to know people, that was extremely helpful, and I still benefit now, so that I just know whom to call and whom to contact, and that's, yeah, having this experience already after 1 year, that really helped me to address people and get in contact with them.
I guess we can go over to the next question.
So the next question would be, what particular aspect of the staff exchange was useful for you? So now I would address this question first to Max.
Hello, Massimiliano Borsani, ISBE, and I participated in 4 different staff exchanges. So I have I can say that the most useful aspect I saw was the 2 aspects in theories. Well, one is related to people, because when I started, I come from a national node that is a candidate national node. We don't have any specific idea what we have no clear idea how to build up our nodes and generally how to connect to the research infrastructures at the European level. So we were eager to have some contacts and a networking of people that are interested into this kind of connection. And the second aspect was to be in the place in which things happens. This because visiting facilities for me have a strong impact, because I remember when I went to Czech Republic Bioimaging, and so, for instance, they have this code, color code to identify user and people that could use some different stuff, some different equipment, and it's quite easy, could be easily understand by everybody, and it's something that I would like to apply in my facility. So they provide me practical idea how to manage facility, and this is kind of the things that I would like to do and apply. And another one, for instance, when I went to the EBI, I saw Kanban in action. Kanban is a way to manage tasks, basically. And since then, I applied to my management things, and it is now one of the things I do every day in my life. So it changed my life for management things forever, because I do it every day. So it's really, they provide me knowledge that I don't have at the moment, I didn't have at the moment. So that's it.
Thanks. You can hand it to Roland.
Yeah. Roland Pirushka, Emphasis. So I can potentially draw a picture of how it felt for a young infrastructure like Emphasis. So we went, we are on the roadmap since 2016, and so it was for me as a scientist with a very basic management background of coordinating few projects. It was like entering a new world, S3 world with a new language. People talking about values of that. So it was kind of a challenging world. And then going to the staff exchange, it felt like someone turned on the light. There were people, on the one hand, asking questions I did, so similar people to me, but there were also people, more importantly, who knew the answers. So that was really helpful. So the light was on, there was shortcuts to find, and what I appreciated the most was the time. So the time that people invested to basically discuss with us, which was really very, very valuable and highly appreciated.
I think we can move over to the next question.
So the next question would be, are any of the learning outcomes still being applied or in or influencing your work? We already heard by Max that some of the methodology is used every day, but I would also like to ask Luca Pezzati for that.
Hi, thanks. I'm Luca Pezzati. I'm the coordinator of IRIS, just for a visual reminder of IRIS. Well, my case is a case of learning on the job, because I was working for 10 years as an access provider in infrastructure. Then I served for 5 years as national coordinator in another research infrastructure. I was national coordinator of DARIA. And I also was in the senior management team of DARIA when DARIA was established. So when I started proposing IRIS, I was, let's say, convinced to know a lot of things about distributed infrastructures. Then I found the time to go to the RItrain Staff Exchange, and that has been a very good choice, because it was really, really important for me, that 2 days of Staff Exchange in Amsterdam, because I got to know a totally different situation, which was distributed infrastructure. So it was totally different from the environment of distributed infrastructure into which I was moving. And like a flash, situation totally different, the core business was totally different, the sustainability model was totally different. So the first thing that I learned is that really research infrastructure are different one to the other, and the landscape is very, very complex. The second thing that I still remember was one of the key messages that came out from 2 days of exchange. The exchange was about governance models, and the suggestion was governance needs to be adaptive because the conditions are continuously changing. Distributed research infrastructures are interacting with political situation constantly on the move. The scientific situation is changing. The opportunities for budget, for funding, for fundraising are changing too. The programs changed. And so the only solution for survival is an adaptive governance. But I introduced the concept of adaptiveness to all levels of the infrastructure. The more things you write in your rules, the more constrictions you put to your research infrastructure, the less probability you will have to survive if the conditions will dramatically change. So this is the skill that I'm still carrying back from those 2 days in Amsterdam that arrived at the beginning of our preparatory phase. So that was very, very timely too. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So, as you know, I mean, as you have heard yesterday, so one of the core activities of our RItrain was actually also to bring about the EMRI program, so the Executive Masters for Research Infrastructure Managers, and so we were also interested. And we will ask Roland about that. Roland, because you actually participated in both in staff exchanges and in the EMRI. So we would like to know, were there any synergies? How did these two activities influence each other? When they inform each other?
So Roland, Emphasis again. Staff exchange. So one of the reasons to participate in staff exchange was to learn what's happening in this S3 world, how S3 projects, landmarks work. And that was also the reason to continue, because it was really very extremely helpful. And then it was, the next step was to go to Emory, apply for the master program and do the next step and learn more. So we did it, two colleagues from Emphasis. We received the certificate for Emphasis, but also for each of us. And we still benefit a lot from the Emory, from the master program. Right now developing the business plan, discussing with ministries. So we basically benefit from it on a day-to-day basis on many different aspects. And I can highly recommend it to anyone probably on any different levels of your infrastructure to go there, to do that. It's really helpful, beneficial. And we had also excellent supervisors who helped us in a very practical way. So it's not only that we learn something about formal management, but it was something that was relevant for the day-to-day business and day-to-day development of the infrastructure. So.
Thanks a lot. That was actually a hidden candy in there. So and there was so if I understand correctly, so actually the staff exchange was the initial spark then to go further on the Emory exercise. So that's great to hear. I think we're up to the next question.
I think that was too good, maybe. So the next question would be, how could the format be improved, adapted, or further developed? And I would like to ask Frauke about that.
I just commented before in the break that actually I realized over the 2 days that I should have been to more staff exchanges. So this is really a criticism on a very high level. And I'm not even sure if it's something that can be addressed by the organizers. But what we realized there at the participants or the students in this staff exchange, that the composition was maybe a little bit unlucky in the sense that we were only 3 participants and we were all from we were from quite young research infrastructures. So the topic of service provision, we all wanted to learn, but it wasn't that easy to share experience amongst ourselves. So a lot of the staff exchange program was based on discussions and exchange and best practice sharing. But if you have 3 people in the room and all of them are just beginners in a way and are just starting to get into the topic, I think we could not really benefit that much from each other. But that's really just a tiny thing. And as I said, as an organizer, you can't force people to register for a certain staff exchange program. Maybe one could consider inviting a few additional experts from other research infrastructures, because also Elixir and EBI, they are quite special in the service that they offer. So for other research infrastructures that offer access to technologies, to actual instruments, the service provision of a research infrastructure that offers access to data resources, of course, is quite different by nature. So maybe that's one thing one could consider for the future.
So you may have realized that we are actually trying to convince you that staff exchanges are a very worthwhile exercise, and but to complete the picture, we would also like now to tease out what did you learn as a host of a staff exchange. And
I will first ask Pavel, because he is also in and he organized the Czech Bioimaging Staff Exchange.
Thank you. So first of all, it was really great to have some people around. It was really also for us positive thing to learn what's needed and what are the questions. I would like to say what we learned, it would be really beneficial to allow more time for the preparatory phase of the visit. Okay, because the announcement is basically published, people can relate to it somehow, but there was not enough specification for what are the expectations, and that would really facilitate also the content of the improvement of the content of the visit. So I think we would need to leave some time maybe for a really live discussion between the host and future participants. That would be important. I don't think that email is really enough for that. Thank you.
Thank you. it sounds a bit like being staged, because I also organized a staff exchange, and I think allowing this discussion time and asking the participants beforehand what their discussion or challenges are helped a lot. So the way we organized the staff exchange within RItrain is we had short presentations explaining what we did successfully, but also our pain points and what just didn't work. So we shared this. And after that, we had, peer group discussions on a selected topic. So usually 3 people, discussing a topic in more depth. And I think that proved very, very useful. So this was one thing that we learned as a host, that this is a format where it's very important to give also time to the participants, because I think also Claudia said it a couple of times, you also learn a lot as a host from the participant, how they approach the topic. And I think that was also the reason why we did a second staff exchange on host-node interaction, even though we realized this is something we don't have a solution. We know this is really challenging, and we hosted a staff exchange. We didn't feel like we can teach the participants, but it was more the exchange idea, and that I think proved very valuable, both in terms of the staff exchange itself, but also for RItrain to kickstart our activity. So this is basically my message. Consider doing a staff exchange. It's not so much time to organize. Yes, you need to get the feedback from the participants, what they expect, but it brings you a lot of input and things to dwell on. So, yeah. Any more? Yeah. Yeah.
So I also hosted a staff exchange, but it was more like a workshop. But I just wanted to add kind of to what Rebecca said is, so I'm from EMBL, European Bioinformatics Institute, and I organised the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion workshop. And again, we felt we weren't the experts here. We really weren't. We don't know exactly what to do. And the more I explored it, I realised no research infrastructure has that knowledge and that experience either. So the approach that I took was to actually find a trainer who was, a specialist in equality, inclusion and diversity, bring it into organisations. So we actually brought that trainer in. And then obviously we had a group of research infrastructures as well. So that was kind of like a different approach if you're not the expert as well. And I think for that topic, it worked very well.
Thanks. Are there questions to the participants or the hosts?
I have a very broad question, which is what can we do on both sides to improve the uptake of staff exchanges? Because there's broad agreement that these are beneficial both to the hosts and to the participants. But it's actually been a real challenge to both to find willing hosts and then to find people who have the time to go to the exchanges. So is there anything that we could do?
Maybe let's start. I see 2 answers or 2 ideas. Maybe you start first with a show of hands. Who would be interested in participating in a staff exchange after what you would heard today? Okay. Would you more be interested in, either a short one-on-one exchange or like an organized group exchange? So if you would be more interested in a one-on-one, show your hands now. And a group exchange like you heard, okay.
Interesting.
That's a clear picture. Who would be interested to be a host? We need to take a picture now. Get your hand up. We can maybe also, Claudia raised her hand first, so maybe she has an idea how to further, address your answer, Kath.
Okay, thank you.
Claudia showed her hand first.
One of the main constraints for hosting or participating in staff exchange is, in our case, we are a very small team. Then it's time, basically. Can we afford to have for the time? And that what it will help is when we are being evaluated all of those sort of activities that we do because we think are crucial and are useful, they are not being counted. We are being judged in other things, but this is not particularly looked at by the Commission or by ESFRI or by anyone really until now, or by our government, our 14 national governments that we have to report to. Then is an activity that is time-consuming, that we think is very valuable, but we are not particularly asked to do. Then you tend to do your day job first. That is to get scientists from A to B. That is what we are there to do. And these very important but less urgent things sometimes get the back. Then I think that the funders around Europe, in all the country and Commission level, sort of value these sort of activities will be an improvement.
So there is also a question of planned and not unplanned, because I mean that we were not participating in any of the organized staff exchange, but still Actris has been participating to 3 different staff exchange activity in this fall. And in addition to that, I think that every one of you have been having a lot of peer support and direct questions and dialogues. So there's always the issue that what is staff exchange really? In terms of that you have an urgent question or something that you have to tackle, you react on that. So am I then spending 2 to 3 months to organize it somehow structurally, or do I directly to contact the person? So I think that the concept of staff exchange and how to handle it in a way that everything which is already and kind of voluntary based there is also taken into account. So how to speed it up, how to make it so easy and fast that it really can be done very easily.
Okay, I will go first. Since I have to cross the room, I can take the time to put in my 2 cents. I'm going a little slowly. One of the things that also in finding hosts, what we need to bring more clearer across is that actually hosting a staff exchange is not about you, I'm spreading your knowledge, but it's actually, it will help you solve your problems by getting ideas for solutions from other participants' research infrastructures, from other points of view. And then I will...
It's very quick. I was looking at the webpage, and I was motivated and enthusiastic, but then I see I have to cover my own travel costs and accommodation costs, and my motivation kind of went down a bit. I know that if you covered, we've done this as well before. So in Calypso Plus, we cover travel and costs, but we do one-on-one exchanges. We've got experience in LAMP, but that's working with Africa and other areas where we really have to pay the cost. But in fact, we only pay half the costs, and we've also had trouble in attracting stuff there as well. So I don't know. I know you can't change it now, but maybe for the next series.
Marcus, I think, has a direct response to that.
No, I think this definitely is an important question. If you would have paid also for the people who moved to the staff exchange, we would have been able to run just half of that. There is always limited budget. So in the RItrain project, the policy was that only the hosts receive the funding. And again, this is a contribution to the real costs, because we have seen that some of the hosts have actually spent much more than we could actually reimburse. So even there is a need to go up with the limits. The question really is, do we need funding for these individual staff exchanges? Because you requested that as one of the very few ones. I think this is what you just do as your daily operation. You have a problem, you have identified another RI who can tackle it, you move there for 2-3 days, whatever, you solve the problem and it's done. The term staff exchange is wrong, or is being used wrong, because you're not exchanging people. You might exchange ideas or solutions, but not necessarily people. You have seen that, at least here in the audience, the need or the willingness for group-based thematic staff exchanges is quite high. And the reason for it is clear. We have seen that in the list of questions, very similar questions along all the different research infrastructures. The question really is the funding. Of course, you could also fund the travel and the accommodation of the people, but then you just host fewer people than you potentially want to host. And I think as a research infrastructure manager, having been that myself for more than 4.5 years, I have the obligation to have funding for my staff so that they can go and learn something somewhere else. That should not be restricted by funding. And we talk here about peanut funding, right? Because sending someone within Europe is, I don't know, 500 euros for traveling and a few hundred euros more for accommodation. So this is really not the big money. Whereas the hosts, they really can aggregate several thousands of euros in preparing such a visit. And I think this is where we should continue to go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to continue what Sanna was saying. So we really did for Actris, we did these sessions, we visited a couple of infrastructures and tried to solve our problems. And what was essential here was that there was a team of us. None of us were able to tackle the things alone and get all the information. And as Markus said, this is interesting. What is staff exchange? What is used here in this program? Because this was not staff exchange. We just find the time and money and went there a couple of days, and so did the hosting organizations. And I could say that we will continue this cooperation. They will come to Finland at some point, I would say.
I want to just make a comment on something that will not replace the staff exchange or whatever we call, or whatever we want to say by this term. But often we forget to include people. We meet each other quite often at various occasions. We go to mostly within our clusters. We go to visit, but we don't take often the advantage of meeting someone else or letting the other part of the team who's not specifically involved in the meeting itself, but look guys, these people are coming to our office. So often we don't even know that this team is coming or people are coming, that we could take advantage. We don't need to travel often specifically or something, but take advantage of what's already done and maybe have a additional short meeting with someone that would be interested in to discuss something on the occasion. So to work together and to share the information and to communicate better within our own teams and between ourselves. Just
okay. Thanks. That might be a good, closing statement. The importance of exchange, being it, as a staff exchange, one-on-one, being it as a organized, structured staff exchange, or just popping into one another's office. And you learned now the great technique of the design thinking. So I think this is something worth considering over lunch. Or you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to add, one thing is that one clear message is that we need to, if we go on with this exercise, we need to work on the branding, on the name. So what is it? Is that is actually exchanged. That sending somebody to such an exercise should also be eligible, let's say, for your own training budget. In a way, it should be factored in your own training budget, and should be also maybe eligible if training comes out of third-party funding projects. So I think this is important. I think one thing that we should stress even more is that this is an approach that can really profit a lot from interdisciplinarity. Because, if you want to exchange stuff between your national nodes, which is important in many aspects to solve practical problems, fair enough, but there's a real opportunity learning from the social sciences as a biomedical research infrastructure, how specific, like community building, other issues are being tackled. Yes, I guess these were my last 2 cents. And with that, we can go to lunch. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot to all of you contributing with your experiences.
Say it, but it says the wrong sentence. The